All right, welcome back. We're going to continue the discussion about alignment, and now we're going to talk about a framework for kind of framing your work with strategic alignment and aligning company objectives with projects. So, this chapter is quite extensive. It goes into a lot of details. Like I said in the beginning of these recordings, I'm going to make a dive into some of these topics and talk a little bit more in detail about some of the aspects I feel are interesting and important for you to remember. All right, so let's start with the framework. We previously talked about goal breakdown structure. The book has talked about this quite extensively, and we kind of reuse that technique when we talk about this. When we talk about the portfolio and strategic alignment as well, and this time we call it organizational goal breakdown structure. And basically, what it does is it aligns this type of approach aligns with some of the more popular ways for working with standards around strategies and like a balanced scorecard and so on. And the good thing about this is it makes goals and requirements quite traceable. Uh, it offers metrics for tracking, benchmarking, oversight, and quality assurance. And and interestingly, one of the reasons we do this is we want to create a rich picture or a holistic approach or a holistic view of what we're looking at. And this type of approach does that because it covers basically three or four different things, like the strategic uh, aspects, the cultural aspects, the process aspects, and also the tactical aspects of business. And it also goes on to defining some of the communication between levels of organization. So, so using the goal breakdown structure for this is quite useful actually. So the way to do this is very similar to what we talked about with the work breakdown structure is. It's the same approach, it's the same method, it's just different things you discuss, right? So what you do is you start with a high level objective, maybe the mission statement, the vision of the company, the overall objectives that you find. And then from there on, you break that down into smaller objectives. And in essence, that's what it's called decomposition. You decompose the main objective into smaller ones with more detail, right? And you keep doing this, uh, and as you do it, you look at the layers and basically ask the question: Is this tier complete and sufficient to ensure the success of the above layer? So this basically means that if we look at the layer we're working on, if we combine all these objectives, do we achieve the objective above it, the objective that we're actually breaking down or decomposing? We add measurements so that we can follow this, that we can benchmark it. How do we measure the various objectives that we have set out? And then we continue the process. Right? Exactly when to stop, it's hard to say, but when you start hitting objectives that are really tiny and start feeling too small or not relevant, then the process is finished, right? So you keep breaking it down. It's going to look the same. It's going to be a hierarchical tree but this time it's about objectives, and each objective has a measurement or a way to measure that goal or objective. So it's pretty straightforward in that sense. All right, the next step we're going to talk about is organizational decomposition of these objectives, right? So what we do is we'll start with the horizontal decomposition because that's the first step you do. You look at, okay, so we have all these objectives, we've broken down these objectives. How do we divide the objectives out across the various departments? In this case, for example, right? And in product portfolio sense, once we hit the product portfolio, we would talk about how do we horizontally decompose these objectives over the projects, right? But we'll start with the different departments, like so, right? And once you've assigned or decomposed the various objectives into the various departments, you would look at one department at a time and then divide those up, further decompose it into smaller parts, smaller sub-objectives, if you may, and that's what's called a vertical decomposition, right? So you start with the horizontal, divide up all the objectives between the departments, and then you have the horizontal decomposition where you put them into the various, you look at one department at a time, and then you kind of divide up and work with the objectives in that department. Okay? So that's the book goes into a lot more details on that. It's actually quite interesting and quite important. So I suggest you take a good look and maybe read that section a couple of times, because it is an interesting idea, and it is the foundation for a lot of these more management-oriented models. All right, then we have cultural decomposition, which is also an interesting aspect. It deals with the culture of the organization. This can be anything, right? I mean, it could be the work-life balance, what type of atmosphere we want to have inside the organization, like the more softer, more culturally biased, and more culture-related objectives. Uh, from this, we create clear objectives and clear ways to measure them. I mean, there's a theme that's reoccurring here, right? It's the clarity of the objective. Everybody has to be able to understand the objective. What is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? That should be clear to everyone. And also that all the objectives we use should be measurable. We can't just create an objective. We also have to create a way to measure that objective. Because if we don't, the objective, we can never tell if we reach the objective or not. Does that make sense? All right. So don't forget about the culture. It has a big impact, and it's actually quite important. The next thing, which we already mentioned in the beginning of this, is the time decomposition. When do things happen? In what time frame are we supposed to reach these objectives? It's important to realize that it doesn't make sense to have, for example, all objectives or goals short term, right? It would just overwhelm people. At the same time, it doesn't make sense to have all the objectives and goals long term. We have to have a spread, some short term, some long term, some medium term, right? So that we use the resources well, and we get a sense that these are goals and objectives we can actually reach, right, in a certain time frame along the way, working continuously with making things better and so on and so forth, right? So just make sure that the goals and objectives have a time decomposition. They are spread out over time, right? And finally, the book goes on to talk about types of projects. And the reason we talk about this is it comes down to how do we, if we talk about product portfolios, for example, we're interested in knowing how would we, what types of products are we running? Should we be running just one type of product, or should we have a balanced product portfolio where we run some strategic, some creative, some research-based, so that we can kind of cover all the bases? So in this book, they use these 5 types of projects. If you look online, you'll find there are so many different variations of this, of course. But the strategic ones are established by senior management and regarded as critical for the organization. These could be the platform projects. For example, the new version of Microsoft Windows would be a strategic project, right? Creative projects are normally not included in the strategic plan, but inspired by it. This could be projects to maybe lay the foundation for future projects, for making sure that future projects are more innovative or something like that. Opportunistic. There's always an aspect of opportunism in this, right? Something arises, an opportunity arises. Let's try and make money on that, right? So these are not really planned. It's an opportunity that shows up, and we decide to try and grab that opportunity, right? Mandatory things that we have to do. It could be that there's a law change forcing us to change the way we accept payment for online transfers, for example. And consequential. We might have a problem or an issue that has arisen due to some other projects, changing some technology, for example, leading to the fact that we have to change other parts of our products in order for them to work like they should. for example. But here, maybe take a break, go online and search for other ways of describing these. If you search, for example, for product portfolio types of projects, you'll find that there are quite a few different types of methods and ways of organizing this. Just go to Google or your favorite search engine and search for it and see what pops up. And read a little bit about what other researchers and other people say when it comes to this type of projects and how you should organize it, how you should work with it, what the plan is, and so on. Right? So you get a contrast to the book that we have assigned.